Welcome everyone to today's episode of the Naked Ambition podcast, where we speak with the people who are making an impact in tech, design, innovation, and leadership all over the world. And one of those people that we are super excited to have on the show today is Scott O'Brien, who is a bit of an expert in all things VR and AR, and he is the founder of the organisation Humans, based out of Australia here. So we're going to be chatting about some trends in this area today. Welcome, Scott.
Yes, thanks for having me, Fiona. It's a pleasure.
Good. And so, Scott, today it'd be great to kind of kick off and just hear a little bit about your story. You're doing amazing stuff in the areas of AR and VR, particularly in the sports arena. Do you want to give the audience a bit of an idea going back? How did you come into founding this cool organisation and have such an interest in this area?
I think a lot of people's story is intergenerational, and mine's a little bit peculiar. I have a great-grandfather, also by the name O'Brien, Edward H. O'Brien, and some of the people maybe over 50, 60 years old will know that name as the founder of Yellow Pages in Australia.
Wow.
But initially Pink Pages, because pink was the cheapest paper to print on, and then it became white and yellow. And then his company basically founded Census, and then it all sold to Telstra, at least in Australia, but they still hang on to Fiji and Vanuatu and so on. So I think intergenerationally, and that said, there was a little bit of the money that didn't pass through the generation. So, I grew up out of town without electricity and water. And at age 3, I had the seed sown. I had this little toy called a Viewmaster. And click, click, this round wheel with the photos in it. And I'm seeing these relations on holidays in Vienna, New York, London, Paris, and so on. And I think, how do they do this? It's like transporting yourself for a kid, to get that sense of being through the mind's eye transported to another place in time. So that was a heavy part of where I'm at today. And then I think, when I was playing professional sport, sitting on a couch in Oslo, Norway, missing home, and then saying, hang on, that is the rooftops of Sydney in this movie. And that got me thinking. And then also thinking, playing professional sport, I was living the fairy tale. And I was thinking, what can I be as passionate about after this? So then as watching The Matrix, I thought, well, why can't we watch sport and do e-commerce in this cyber construct? And so super naively, I hung on to this idea, and I just kept going into the deep ends at digital media conferences, IT conferences, and just sort of bouncing it off, prepared to look stupid. And eventually in 2006, Wolf Blass combined with the Ashes cricket test and did it like a virtual cricket stadium where you could do voice to text, and this was sort of pre-people doing big Facebook campaigns and everything. And you could choose the Australian team or the England team, take a seat in this virtual stadium, and then you could win tickets. And then, of course, lo and behold, in earlier this year, January this year, the Pink test raised $3.1 million off selling the virtual seat. So sort of interesting how that concept's come full circle. That's just a small sliver of the idea I had, because as an athlete, I knew that value of the point of view on the court, on the field, and so on. And you can only really get that if you 3D reconstruct things on the fly. And that ain't easy. So I had to navigate a lot of dark areas of knowledge for me and have them lit up. And ironically, it was one of my amateur sports friends that was lecturing industrial design at University of Western Sydney that had seen me sort of introduce like a Macy's parade. So that's one other stepping stone. I did something like a Macy's parade in 2007 in Sydney. So we had the streets lined bigger than they were for the Olympics in 2007, like a Thanksgiving Day parade. And then a couple of years later, I worked on online retailer. I introduced that with a guy that owned the event in the Gold Coast. And that was the second biggest internet retail event in the world. And all these things in a blender, together with my amateur sports buddies saying, hey, what do I do with this augmented reality thing I'm getting my industrial design students to do, came together as, aha, that's it. at the online retailer event, IBM were one of the sponsors, and they were saying it just can't be picture price anymore. You got to give consumers a playful something to feel like maybe they own this product already before they've hit add to basket, add to cart. So when I saw this, within 10 seconds, I sort of had in my mind, okay, I need to quit this job and focus on this magic and that overlap of magic, psychology, and technology. And lo and behold, 6 months after we made that monumental decision in a pub just nearby Sydenham train station, we'd worked with 6 of some of the world's biggest companies, so McDonald's, HSBC, Schneider Electric, and so on. And then boom, a huge secret project that led us towards fast tracking making augmented reality glasses in 2010. And we did so off what is comparably a minuscule budget compared to what a lot of the big tech companies have today. But it's funny because naively, we wrote a business plan saying we'll bootstrap out of Creative Services, this hardware company making glasses. And the glasses that we made in 42 days and nights, from traveling the world and bringing some of the world's best talent together, was more sophisticated than a couple of the glasses that have launched this week from some well-known names. So we're pretty proud of it. But one thing is, of course, to get these things out into the market, not just to do secret projects. So, here in Australia, things are changing. We're starting to connect to the world a bit more effectively. And, as the saying goes, what an exciting time to be alive.
Wow, what an intro. Oh my God, how do we even begin on that? I want to come back to your opinion on the Wayfarers, because that's so interesting. So it's like something that you were playing with in 2010. Now we're 2022 and they've just launched this week. But I mean, talk us through, tell us about that professional sports career and then that leap into seeing the opportunity, to be doing this, to really be like allowing people to feel like they are part of that experience. What did that look like, and what were some of the kind of early developments there?
Getting into that sport came from maybe several years of frustration. Late teens, I was very injured and I missed the normalized political pathway that you have to get into an Institute of Sport squad, which then invariably leads to a national team, because that helps the National Association secure more funding from government. So because I was injured in those years, I had to find a wild card way to go about this. So my initial sport was field hockey. I played every sport from the country, so luckily also from the country, I was gifted from my forward-thinking parents, who were super laggards, but they bought a Commodore 64. So I wasn't just outside playing sport, but I was actually coding on cassette tape. I can't believe it as I look back today. But in sort of coming to the point of late teens, early 20s, looking to focus on field hockey, get into the Sydney Olympic squad and so on, I was sort of always going to be on the periphery. And I thought I had to find something that gives me that edge. How can I bring something innovative to the sport? And sort of on a trip to Sydney, just happened to walk by a sports festival, Darling Harbour, and here were these Finnish and Swedish people playing this crazy sport called innebandy or salibandi in their land, but in English it's called floorball, floor and ball. And it's like ice hockey. And I said, this looks pretty good. I'll give it a go. I was in jeans and like a black shirt and whatever, but I couldn't help myself. I just love at first sight. And it had the sort of hip and shoulder contact like AFL. It had strategy like basketball, and some of the skills and elements of ice hockey without the maliciousness. And it just was perfect. And I was just in love with it straight away. And, within 12 months, I thought, wow, we could go to the world champs. I'll start a national team. So we got sponsorship from Qantas and PlayStation and all these people. And
this is for floorball, like something that's not even in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. And we went on a tour through Finland, then the world champs in Czech Republic, and the people following us. We had such an incredible following from Finland. People just on the spot decided, I'm going to be part of the Australian cheer squad. And they traveled with us on almost zero notice. We're, in a way, the Jamaican bobsled team. So we got to the Czech Republic, and the crowds and the atmosphere were just off the hook. And it's like, how has Packer and Murdoch not heard about these sports yet? And perfect for TV, perfect for schools and social competitions and so on. And beautiful TV product. And so, that was 98. And so then on, I said, this is it. I'm moving permanently away from the field hockey. I'm taking on this sport. And so out of the rejection, in a way, of the pathways of field hockey, I found floorball and, no regrets at all. And I lived the fairy tale in Scandinavia for 5 years, in fact, sort of back and forward. And with that, I did about 10,000 hours coaching in schools, universities, prisons, juvenile justice centres. And it was incredibly fulfilling. And regrettably, I had to come to a point where I was up against $30 million AFL budget. And I was doing handsomely, off my own bat, 150, 200K a year, coaching this sport in all these different places. But I thought, if this is the scale, I need to at least bring back $1 million to the sport. So I have to take a year off to do that. What kind of job can I do that gets $1 million? And I haven't completed a degree. So I found a fellow who had the rights to like a Thanksgiving Day parade in Sydney, and they failed to sell $1 for 3 years. I'd cut my teeth on a sport no one heard about, and I wear the pride and notoriety of securing a betting sponsor first time for a sport in Australia. So
you started that. We can blame you for that.
Yeah, exactly. So that was Centrebet, and so Centrebet, Jared Duffy was the CEO, and they had some links to Scandinavia, so they bet on floorball games. So there's some synergies there. And I'll never forget our first introduction to Australian TV. Tony Squires was hosting a show called The Fat, a bit of a sports panel, and Jared Duffy was a guest on there. And Tony Squires had said, well, you can bet on the Prime Minister and the elections. And what is this thing called floorball? You can bet on anything. The floorball, what is that? Is that some sort of Danish pornography? And, it was close. It was from Scandinavia, but, for Australians, like no one had really heard of it. And, within a few years, we've managed to get it pretty well known in a few centres. And like I used to live in Newcastle, so it was actually played in most schools there. But through Scandinavia, it's the main sport. It's bigger than soccer and ice hockey for participation in just like 30 years of being introduced as a sport. So that really helped me cut my teeth looking at, sponsor fits, marketing fits, and innovation. In fact, I ended up making the equipment and clothing lines. It was a fun chapter, but it very much prepared me for what was required for innovative tech and building teams. So in 2010, I guess that came to fruition, and I got to build probably one of the best teams ever on an AR/VR project to deliver what we did in 42 days. Is people don't believe it, but I've got the video evidence. We did it. And you mentioned some comments on the Ray-Ban Wayfarers and so on, which are not augmented reality glasses. They're more recording / spy glasses, some people might say. But I mean, it's good that fashion's mixing with tech on the face in a sense, in that way. But it does show that some of the big tech companies are a little more reserved of coming out with more features, more functions. In the day Steve Jobs said about iPod, it's 1,000 songs in your pocket. Well, the real day to celebrate is when we've got 1,000 apps on our face. And at the moment, the people wearing reading glasses have just got one app on their face. As they look back at themselves 5 years from now, they think, how do we do that? As we look at the mobile now for navigation and all sorts of things, how did we organize meeting up with each other and all this? But we'll have that same sort of wave of how did we do it, when we become accustomed to having glasses that actually have more apps than just recording what's in front of you.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is exciting, but I'm sure there are greater leaps coming. I think it's something you actually posted on LinkedIn just the other day, that there's sort of been this kind of lag when we were all anticipating where virtual reality was going to take us. Even 20 years ago, it felt like it was just around the corner, and then it's kind of been limping. And I remember when Oculus Rift was released, and we thought, okay, everyone's going to be getting them for Christmas, and it's sort of like it's like there, and then it's not, and it's there and it's not. Like you said, it's a really exciting time to be alive. What are you excited about? Like, what do you think is really coming? Are we on the edge of something now, of this kind of mass adoption, I suppose, of these kinds of technologies on the daily?
Yeah. One of the choking points to deliver high-end experience has been bandwidth, and 4G, whilst it's good, is not quite good enough for really high demands, such as streaming photoreal holographic telepresence. So I sort of joke now we're on 2D Zoom. Some people refer to Brady Bunch. I refer often to a prison window conjugal visit. We're sort of trapped behind this glass, and with augmented and virtual reality, photoreal 3D live streaming, we can be in the same scene. We could be around a campfire, we could be sitting on a beach having this podcast, and so on. So it's just exponential multiples of gains in human to human communication versus the 2D trap that we're in at the moment. So, Jerry Seinfeld used to sort of joke about relationships and what breaks them. It's not, and he used to relate it to the vending machine. And it's not the first time you try to push the vending machine over to get the little lolly that's just hanging there. It takes a few goes. And so VR, and AR for that matter, and any reality, I like to say reality agnostic rather than the acronyms. So across all the realities, it takes 2 or 3 goes, and I think we're just about there now. We've got buses driving past us in the city with Telstra saying we've got 75% coverage. We've got Optus claiming they've got better coverage and better speeds. We've got Starlink serving southern New South Wales and northern Victoria now with exceptional speeds, which fits into, one of the things I'm most excited about, and that is the importance of augmented and virtual reality, as important, if not more, than road, rail, and airports. And thereby the next step is, well, if we've got this face-to-face communication that we can do in a very authentic way that acknowledges the conduits of trust, loyalty, persuasion, bonding, then why do we need to live in the city? We can live somewhere where it's more human, less concrete under our feet, more sand, more grass under our feet, more time in nature, more time with our children, or our parents, or neighbours, and immediate community, rather than drive time FM keeping us on the highway for an hour or two. Well, hats off, there are some funny people on drive time morning and afternoon shows. Good luck to them, and I appreciate their humor forever and a day. But what's even better, is more time as a human, less time behind a wheel on bitumen.
Yeah. This is so exciting as well. And I love you talking about that, the humanity and the connection and the trust. And they're all things actually it'd be good to dig into in more depth as well. But on this, this moment that we are in at the moment, now we have a lot of that time back. A lot of us are working, this whole remote revolution, and, we're all in the thick of it, which we know, obviously. There's a lot of freedoms that now we've got, a lot taken away, but the freedoms in terms of time that we've got, over the last 18 months. Do you reckon it's going to accelerate the need for, and the appetite, I suppose, for these different versions of reality?
Not a question. And in a way, remote is a trigger word for me.
Yeah.
And I like to, I guess, challenge convention on a couple of things from the bias that I've had.
Yeah.
And so one is remote, one is, I guess, deriving from human-computer interaction. So firstly, remote. For me, as I look at it, when we travel away from home to work, that other place is remote. Home is home. So the dialogue at the moment is, you're working from home, that's remote. And of course the boss would say that, or of course the ASX CEO would say that. But no, sorry, Mr., mostly Mr., unfortunately. Remote is when we have to leave the front door. And if we look at the world that way, then we'll understand what taxes, what psychological taxes, what environmental taxes we're paying, even though they may or may not be official taxes. What's the tax on our life, the quality of life, our spirits, having to leave the front door, leave our family at home for the majority of the day, these sort of things. So I think that it's important to flip that narrative and look at anything out the front door is remote and home is home. And the other one with the essence of, it's sort of philosophical in a way, slash technical, is the device definitions of what's augmented and virtual reality. So, 500 million people a day are using mobile phones on their face. I call it monetizing identity, vanity, and ego with, all the funny little things you can do on your face. As cameras are smart and they understand your facial features and so on. And that's a good sort of soft cultural apprehension onboarding to the technology. And so that's what most people have kind of experienced with augmented reality, even though 99% of people don't know it's called augmented reality, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But in mobile, a lot of this is being sold as the AR opportunity. And then you get the bricks on the face, and a lot of people call that thing, almost, like this blindfolded VR experience.
Yeah.
So to me, that might help manufacturers define a category and call it VR, but to me, it's all augmented reality. So in the human-computer design interface thinking, we've got all these sensors, the 5 main sensors that Aristotle got us to focus on, and then all the submodalities, which have been marginalized in a lot of ways for good and bad reasons. And so, yeah, sure, the virtual reality headsets sort of hijack our sight, but they don't hijack every other sense. We've still got this other information coming into our brain of what's happening in the real world. So for me, that's just augmenting your human experience. If we wanted to get really technical, on that end, was his name Jake in Avatar, who put himself in a tube and then became this blue creature. That is full VR.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting how language then helps shape people's understanding and critical thought or cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I never really thought about it like that as well, but it is just like the labels that are put on it that make sense to productize something, to market it, to sell it, because it is a pretty confusing area. Still for a lot of people, it's like they more think about the product first rather than the actual experience that the thing is going to deliver or could it deliver. Can you talk to us about, paint us a picture of what are some of the experiences that potentially or that could be possible in the next couple of years, particularly because I know you guys at Humans are big on esports. It's about virtual stadium experiences, and that's probably something that's super topical as well at the moment, given, people's obsession with sport, but, not being able to access it right now is so hard. So I guess sport, education is another area that you're really big on. I'd love to really hear your perspectives about, what's going to happen there? What could we expect to see? What would you like to see?
Yeah, well, speaking of the false starts earlier, one of the big issues for the VR industry was you had a lot of programmers punching out programmer stuff. So you can expect wild roller coaster rides and zombies. So in a way, there's no two other use cases that could turn people off VR for life than having those as their first experiences. The zombie speaks for itself because you actually can give people PTSD in a sense if you're not careful. So you need to really be cautious at how you onboard people and design. And then because, you know, people believe the experiences they're having in VR are real. So, you know, if you're facing them with a zombie,
awesome. It's exciting,
it can be
but yeah, scary.
embodied and real. Yeah. So, and then with the roller coaster, it's a neurophysiological 101 that most unfortunate programmers didn't really get a grasp of. But if your eyes are telling you you're going up and down and around really fast, and your middle ear is saying, no, you're sitting in a chair, mate. Your brain will have a divorce and you'll have carrots coming out of your mouth. And it's the reality of, you know, why there's been so many sort of VR failed, people collapsing or falling over, even though, you know, they're on flat ground and so on, because their brain's just gone through this crazy conflict from getting information from two different sources that totally conflict and knock them off balance. And so unfortunately, that was an explanation of around the 2016 to 2019 false start, where it went from blazing hot to like a VR winter. But of course, then in the last year, it's really started to bounce back as I guess more VR and AR companies have gone to niche enterprise use cases, and the case studies just profound. And you know, some of the best are out of education, where you know you can get kids to have 6 times better focus. So in a day and age of screens and ADHD and all the medications and blah blah blah, having focus 6 times, that's incredible. And not only that, you know, you're seeing statistics where, for example, early teens learning astrophysics over say 4 weeks, I think it was, cohort A, cohort B. A's got the normal teacher and normal teaching 2D resources. Cohort B, they're C- students, but they're given the spatial, as in you can walk around and discover and play and interact. They're given that VR experience. Over 4 weeks, C- students overtook the A+ by above 20%. And then they got tested 2 weeks later for retention. The gap was even greater. C- students overtook the A+ even further. So, you know, with that as some backbone, and there's some pretty basic neuroscience reasons why AR VR has this unfair advantage over 2D. And we've seen a lot of these great statistics play out into the e-commerce world as well. And so then I have a bias for sport in that it was my past profession. But with that, as we know, as has been the strategy for different media leaders in the past, sport is a great way to tap into other people's networks, other people's structures, and it's a soft culture, lower apprehension way to learn a new behavior to get past some of the technical frictions. And of course, you know, if you follow a favorite team, they're playing once or twice a week, so there's some regularity in it, and it's highly social. So it's just got all those factors. And so I guess primarily what I'm interested in, as indicated by our company name, which took me about 1,000 goes to come up with, it's a mash of immensely human, because I think, you know, many people through pressures of paying a mortgage or whatever other reasons have sort of forgotten what it means to be human, and then have also looked at technology as reducing humanity. But it can have a role in helping us refine it and embellish it, I think, and have more time face to face, as I was describing. If we have better tools to work from home, to avoid that remote out the front door, then you know, it can actually give us more face to face time. In effect, like a task that might take an hour, well, AR/VR can take 10 minutes. A training course in TAFE that takes 3 years, that could take 3 months. To design a helicopter could take 5 years. In AR/VR, it's proven it can take actually 5 months for an equivalent or better result. So there are just so many wins to be had. And so with sport, human endeavor, it writes its own script. It's social. It's a honeypot for brands. It's a beautiful conduit to e-commerce. It has telehealth sort of adjacency, beautiful education adjacency. And the other thing is, I mean, Steve Jobs was famous for taking his walking meetings. So, there's some studies, if you sit for 20 minutes or more, your brain starts to dull a bit, which is why we might change positions in our seat, or like you are. And, I'm standing at the moment.
Yeah.
I try to do most of my day standing, and the brain lights up differently. More open to learning, more perhaps more social in a sense as well, just as we're moving around. And head-up displays will enable more of this. And of course, I find it interesting that, as I grew up, we saw TV ads of Norm in Life Be In It, sitting down, growing his belly, and watching sport, merely watching sport, and on the telly, which we used to call the idiot box. And then, of course, as more and more mobiles got into our hands and we crossed the streets without looking up at cars going by, we would call, look at these zombies. So idiot box and zombies have been associated with these two huge evolutions of technology. And so when we have glasses on our face, well, my opinion is at least our heads will be up. And from our designs that we did 10 years ago and from more recent ones, the design bias will be to have the clear views of, your time and space in a way that's safe, and in moments that you consciously declare, you're not having cars going by and things like that. That's when you can have more of the graphic overtake your view. So I think we're heading into an immensely human future, which can then get us more time with sand under our feet, grass under our feet. And with that, sort of more compassion, more empathy, better population distribution. So at the moment, we've got things like Greater Sydney Commission, where they're talking about 3 cities in one big city. It's still a mega city and I believe with mega problems, and it's hard to avoid. And so I think a few years ago, Melbourne, for a stretch of 10 years or whatever, won the world's most livable city. And it was ironic that its own institution, RMIT, did a study that the most livable city can't be more than a population of 1 million people. So what I would love to see in Australia, as we anticipate going from 25 million to 50 million in the next decades, is that we create brand new cities from scratch. And this time we do it, without screwing up 99% of things.
You might get your wish, actually, with a lot of the studies that are going on about new neighbourhoods and new meaning of community and stuff. I think there's some exciting stuff happening there.
Yeah.
So a lot of this work that you're doing, particularly in the area of, coming back to the stadiums and the sports, like what would an experience like that be? And also I have to ask, what is the metaverse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell us?
Well, I'll start with that. I should say I start with explaining no one can really say what the metaverse is. It's something that will evolve, and then maybe it's as definable and dissectable as consciousness, to be honest. The perhaps strict technical definition of it for many people is that it's a totally interoperable VR, AR, whatever landscape, where not necessarily one company owns or winner takes all, as some people fear in the dystopian Hollywood scripts. And of course, a lot of books, and like Ready Player One and so on, a lot of the books were written at a time sci-fi writers were paid to be dystopian, because that's what the Hollywood studio owners thought was returning the biggest buck. But it's interesting, about 3 to 5 years ago, these sci-fi writers got together after already having made a good living. And at a convention, they said, well, screw this dystopian thing. We got enough money now. Let's start writing utopian future technology stories. So, in a way, Star Trek was that. And I can't say I'm a Trekkie. I mean, I read a few good quotes, and I love some of the meaning behind it, and the social good, progressive thoughts and scripting woven in that has parallels to the real world. But one day, in a few years I was living in the States, 2013 to 2016, I actually thought, I'm in Vegas and there's a Star Trek convention on, I'm going to go. And it was amazing. There were some of the most beautiful people and so clever people I've ever met. So yeah, the metaverse, I think it's quite intangible in a way, and it's evolving. But of course, there's more than $5 trillion a company now trying to be the one, or at least a significant part of it.
Is it like living your life in virtual reality? Is that what we're talking about here? Or what's like the actual kind of definition?
So, yeah, so day-to-day thinking, you know, you might get up and have your favorite cereal or porridge or something. And then, you know, usually your thoughts are get yourself ready, get family ready, and or leave home for work or work from home or what have you. Lunch breaks, go for a walk, and you got your routine of the day. So with augmented and virtual reality and IRL, as many of us call it, in real life, what will happen pretty soon, and I think within 24 months, many of us will duck in and out of the different realities. And so in a way, the winner of this, or one of the defining characteristics of winners heading towards a metaverse will be those that have eyewear that do both AR and VR and pass through total reality as well. So you can easily just dip in and out. Just like if you're in a swimming pool, you can backstroke, freestyle, butterfly. You know, it's just like you choose your stroke for whatever race it is you want to race, and be able to switch on a moment's notice. And, you know, like with our sports application. So in a way to segue to that. So at the moment, what we accept with watching sport is we go to the stadium, we pay $20 to $100 a ticket, and we get to sit in one seat. And that's been enhanced in the last 20, 30 years by big video replay boards that sit 50 to 100 meters away from our eyes. And the content on it is decided by some director guy who thinks he can cover what most people want to watch. But I question if he or she or whoever gets that right. Because oftentimes you ask 50,000 people a question and you can get 50,000 different answers. So then the other alternative to watch sport, of course, is on TV. And we've gone from like one black and white camera to one color camera to 20 to 30 cameras in HD and some in 4K now. Still, you're sort of getting a producer or a director to cut every 3 to 8 seconds to compensate for you not being there in the 3D reality. And still, they're directing it. You're not choosing those cuts and zooms and so on. So the alternative that we provide is that with an AR VR tool, whether it's a mobile or eyewear, you have the power to not just watch from any seat in the house, the best seat, the worst seat, whatever seat in the house. So it's almost as though you've bought all 50,000 seats. But better than that, much better than that, is that you're going to be able to, or you already can with our demo app, which is, you know, not publicly available now, but within the year it will be. You're able to walk across that boundary line, the white line. So you could be on the court watching the next Australian Open tennis final on the court as the serve comes over your shoulder, you know, as though you're a doubles player, but you're not. You're there like Patrick Swayze in Ghost.
The ball girl, love it.
And or, you know, you could be on the middle of the pitch at the next cricket match, and in football, watch, you know, the Socceroos and the Matildas score from the penalty spot as they qualify for World Cups and so on. So it's, yeah, access absolutely all areas. And it's funny, you know, when we even talk to some of the world's top broadcasters, they think, so you're going to be able to watch right on the sideline, like Jack Nicholson watching the Lakers and so on. So you need to take your thinking a bit more than that. So, going back to the inspiration of the Matrix, what if anything is possible type of thinking.
This is so cool. So you've got an app now in development. Are you guys looking at hardware as well, or have you got an opinion on, because you've talked a little bit about, the glasses that we're going to need to wear. Like, is that still where we are in terms of how we're going to need to engage, or how is some of that evolving in terms of, what we're actually going to need?
Yeah, so, for mine, the path of Apple or Facebook or anyone releasing the kind of eyewear that I think should be in market has been a bit too slow. HTC's, done a good job. And of course, there's other things there like Quest, and recently TikTok bought Pico. So, it's good to have 3 big ones in the race, but there'll be more for sure. But yeah, they're not quite there with a device that is accessible, is scalable, and can as effectively go across realities. I think there is something coming though. I'm sort of, I guess keeping my eye on some IP that's coming together in different directions.
Yeah.
And so I feel in the next 1 to 2 years, we will see that, and it will be like, this has been sort of proposed before, it's come and gone, but it's like the Jerry Seinfeld joke with the vending machine. It just takes a few wobbles and then eventually, boom, it'll just happen overnight. And and I think, it's important to identify where is it best bundled. I mean, at one stage, I was being asked back in 2011, the year after when my old company first made these glasses, how could we bundle AR glasses in with buying a brand new car? And then the car owner could, instead of doing their 2-hour onboarding for this sophisticated sports car, they could just put on the glasses and get all the instructions without having to book in. And then if something happens under the hood, or they just want to be proud about it, they can put on the glasses and it would identify everything under the hood. So I thought that might be one of the ways, but also I got to see how a holographic fishbowl of a sports stadium could be shared by 40, 50, whatever thousands of people at the same time socially. And, I got to work with Olympic creative directors in that project and so on. And I've sort of never let go of it. And I've got the template for that sort of thing. And pretty excited to see that happen. But just as much as I talk about top-down, elite level sport and Olympic ceremony type level entertainment, the virtual stadium sort of thing, where it can be visualized photoreal and it could be modularized and hyper personalized, which means any local football team who, let's face it, with COVID, have really struggled, and without kids and even adults socially kicking a ball around or hitting a ball around, life can be pretty mundane for many of us that need that movement. Most of us do. So I think this will be an important tool for them to have up their sleeve as a sort of a sponsorship asset, and with that, be able to, I guess, overcome that problem that's occurred over the last 5 to 10 years, where a lot of local sports groups have lost funding from national franchise type companies because things have, sort of gone back up to head office, and then the local clubs have sort of missed out on some of those funding opportunities. So, and then of course, in the state of New South Wales, we've had massive stadium budgets, 800 mil of stadium upgrade budgets, which at first were going to go to the city stadiums, and country felt left out. So there's ways and means we'll be able to introduce like centimeter accurate tracking on local fields and courts, which basically will help turn them into AR VR arcades in the open air, and sort of esportsify even local sports.
Wow. Love that merging of these real life spaces or even underutilized spaces.
Yeah,
In rural towns that then can be utilised in a completely different way. That's like really thinking about it from a completely different perspective. I mean, this question also might be linked to some of that, thinking about, and I know this is another area that you're interested in, and I see you talk about a little bit, is telepresence, holographic telepresence. And it's another one that's probably related to 5G. But I did go to a conference a couple of years ago, and the speaker was a hologram from Florida, where he was, into Sydney at the time. And I thought, okay, this is all going to happen. I think we started talking on LinkedIn initially, and I was sort of excited about, even in the work that we do, could we be, in multiple locations and doing something like that? Is that, as a trend, is that something that you see becoming more mainstream? What has sort of slowed some of that adoption? Again, is it the commercial costs, or is it a 5G factor?
Yeah, so first of all, like with some other jargon in this space, it's sort of been bastardized, to be honest. And the word hologram actually technically means a remote intersection of a particle of light. There are some larger companies guilty of using this term sort of incorrectly, because maybe the PR department decides it's just easier to talk to people. We can't make up a new word, or if we do, we have to invest heavy in it and blah, blah, blah. So hence, even the AR, VR has become XR and MR and all these other Rs, and people in the industry are, what the hell, just, accept that it's called AR and VR, and we'll keep investing in educating people this. And so what it has actually also gone to a court case, because the people who can do that remote intersectional particle of light, which may become a thing in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, say we do that, and you're, cramping our style. So what's come out of that is that the nuance, it might sound ridiculous, but the nuance of calling it holographic, so hologram-like, is acceptable. And so, I suspect what you may have seen is a 2D video projection into a clear sort of perspex and or vinyl, and this comes from around about the year 1453, where an Italian theatre projectionist was able to create these ghostly images on stage by
it's like the illusionist stuff, is it? Yeah, that movie. Yeah.
Hence the term smoke and mirrors. That's where it comes from. And so when people are playing a trick on you, they're smoke and mirrors. That's where it comes from. 1453, and it's around the same year as the Gutenberg press came about. And that's an incredible, well, both of them are incredible stories of innovation. So, I think that with that technology, it's had a role to play. Are you still getting my volume, by the way?
Yeah, I'm getting your volume. Yeah, it just went a little bit patchy there, but that's all right.
One of the AirPods ran out.
That's it. Yep, cool.
Unfortunately, the AirPods go for 50 odd or whatever minutes. So, so from the Pepper's Ghost theatre projection trick, there's then been some other techniques to simulate a human presence. But now, like being able to use a mobile phone to view the world through the camera, but then superimpose a human, says, there's something in this. So definitely there'll be some snackable experiences this way. But when we're wearing glasses, that's when it will really, really come into its own, because it will be hands-free, effortless. You'll be able to express yourself with your hands. So unfortunately now, like the webcam doesn't give me so much head to toe. And it's actually an important facet of communication. I mean, I could do the whole podcast with my hands like this, and it's part of the bricks of trusting people, of course, in face-to-face conversations. So, in a way, that's what we're looking to simulate, but we're also in this transition time, we're looking at what sort of metaphors are a replacement. So there might be some direct things we take from face-to-face communications, but also some things we might look as metaphors. But also, one thing is, if we were in a holographic telepresence now, we would see each other, and possibly with headsets on as well. But more and more, there's becoming the AI to erase the mask and sort of see the face anyway. But one thing is for us to talk with thin air between us. But what if we were wearing the devices where we could see each other, look each other in the eye, see our hand gestures and everything, but also in between us, just like in Iron Man and Avatar and so on. And we could have the topology or some sort of graphic of the subject or the object we're talking about. And we could slice and dice it different ways. We could annotate it, play with it. And it would risk mitigate the conversation or the decision making. It would make it more fun. It's more embodied. We're more likely to recall the meeting and be more productive. And in enterprise, you know, it's oftentimes you're finding 90% reduction in errors and, you know, such an increase in safety and so on as well. So besides the fun, there are also, you know, great returns for enterprise in having these conversation dynamics change.
With, you know, I mean, it's often quoted, but it's like 70% of people or something are visual learners. So even all of this kind of zooming and taking away the visuals, even, you know, we find virtual whiteboarding, it's not the most high tech, but that has made a massive difference in people being able to communicate complex ideas and conversations. So something like that could just be enormous, I think, in business in terms of potential and exactly as you say, the actual commercial value of those kinds of tools in allowing people to communicate better and understand these kinds of bigger ideas and concepts. It's so exciting. So much in here. I want to ask you a question that, and I think you're going to have a good one for this, but something we do love asking people is, what is something that you believe or know is true that almost no one agrees with you on?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, one thing might be my bandwagon around the remote work definition, but also the relationship of populations to space. I find very few people are thinking that way just because there's so much sunk cost into the built cities. And, you know, there are so many sort of bias to just extend the land out, extend out, or build up, knock down and rebuild. Whereas I think, why don't we look at, you know, Dubai, Tel Aviv, Vegas, all these great cities that have been built in the middle of the desert. We got plenty of it out there. And we've got some very clever people. In fact, a lot of the Australians went to build the water infrastructure in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. So, you know, we've got capability on land here now. And also, that said, acknowledgement to First Nations. There is so much design and science, in a sense, that I think we can learn from. And, you know, as a ritual at the start of every day, I think, you know, it'd be great for every business to have some initiation of the day to learn something from First Nations. And and sort of take it as a ritualized way to start the day. But then over time, look at ways where we start valuing their input more and more, and they become not just more commonly managers, but also leaders. So, you know, I guess I'm not alone in that kind of thought, but I like to verbalize it, you know, as much or more than anyone else I know. But it's also, I'm also, you know, many ways, not my own ideas. I like to surround myself with people like yourself who are just great to bounce off with and, you know, cook and stir the ideas as a village.
Yeah, absolutely. This is I want to just get onto one thing just with the time that we've got left as well, because we have kind of talked a bit about what you're doing. I mean, you've touched on a few really exciting projects that you're doing at Humens, but if some people are listening to this alive now or in the recording, how can they reach out to you, find out more about what you're working on? Who are the kinds of companies that you're keen to partner with as well, for anyone who's working in enterprise and is actually really excited about bringing maybe more of this to their offering?
Absolutely. So my website is there, scott@huments.com. And I think that, we're open to a variety of companies. Of course, our first focus is in around sport, and giving people that crazy aha moment. It's sort of like, when we first showed people seeing themselves holographically, it's like they're seeing themselves in a mirror for the first time in their lives after 30, 40, 50 years. It's that, like, I was deaf, 98% deaf from age like 7 to 11. And when I started to hear again, my goodness, the schoolyard was loud and so on. And you see some of those videos on YouTube where people hear for the first time. It's that profound. And so when people are seeing themselves standing outside their body, looking back at themselves, it is profound. And in fact, one of our investors, we filmed him to do a soft launch with TEDx in 2016 in the Sydney Opera House. And he not only had that profound, it's almost like an overview effect when you're an astronaut and you look back at Earth and you see the curve. It's that and more. But he also thought, hang on, I'm leaning a bit to one side. And through this, he's had a lifetime problem with his back fixed, with work between his chiro and podiatrist, from observing, looking outside his body and looking back at himself. Wow. So, there's all sorts of profound realizations when stepping outside yourself, looking back. And I think, we've also seen through social media, there's a lot of negative narrative and dynamics with self and identity and body image. So I think this could actually be very good for people to appreciate themselves in all shapes and sizes. And so with that, we are looking to, besides the sports work, we are looking to connect with a dozen or so Australian companies with budgets, probably in the 30 to 100K range, who would be having distributed teams, who would be interested to connect these teams in this profound way, and be some of the first to sort of trial this photoreal holographic scenario.
Cool. All right, that's a big call out. I think that's awesome. Okay, well, I hope there's 12 companies out there that are pretty excited and want to put themselves forward. That sounds like an absolute bargain, I think, to do something cool like this. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. This has been so much fun. We didn't even get a chance to chat about alter ego, actually. We'll have to have you on to talk about some more things. You've seen that TV show in the US. Which looks hilarious. What do you think of that? Sorry, just quickly. Wrapping up.
Yeah, look, it's a great concept. And in 2011, my old company, we did the world's first mobile to TV relationship. So the mobile now is part of the body, right? So we had a Kia car drive out of your TV. You could pick its color, you could change it. The local dealership would then know what's your color, what the model that you wanted, and book test drives and so on. So I find it amazing that even still 10 years later, that there are not more of these more enlightening, rewarding experiences between the mobile and TV, even though, of course, a lot of people have cut cords or not even had a cord in some cases. But the alter ego with that identity issue, I think is quite good for some people. And then I think for others, we also want to see the person as they are. And I think through people exposing themselves and performing in the alter ego, they'll get all the encouragement, and then they'll realize, actually, my real self is great. Let's present this.
Cool. Google Alter Ego if you're out there and you haven't checked that out yet. There's some cool videos. I think it's just released in the US. Scott, amazing. Thank you so much. And I think this is the beginning of lots of conversations. This is so much fun, and I feel like we just scratched the surface. So, yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in today.